All right, everybody, welcome back. Good afternoon. We've got more to say about Bryce Cabeldue earlier today. And if you haven't already seen that video, by the way, go check it out. I went over Bryce Cabeldue by the raw numbers. Now we're going to take a look at him by the traits. What does he actually do on a football field well? And what does he need to get better at? What might he just never be very good at? You guys know the drill by now. It's a little bit different because we're talking about a sixth-round pick. I don't think it's reasonable to expect a sixth-round pick to have a long list of great attributes and to stress too much about the stuff that he doesn't do. So keep in mind when you're watching this video that I might be pointing certain things out, but I'm not expecting him to fix everything and become an all-pro. That's not a reasonable expectation for a guy like this. If he does it, great, but that's not on the bingo card with Cabeldue. So I'm going to go through the pros and cons, and just keep in mind that we're just trying to be objective here. And even within me trying to be objective, I admit that I probably am scaling back on the criticism a little bit because we've gotten to this point of the draft. Please like this video, click the thumbs up if you haven't already. Subscribe if you're new, click the bell for notifications, become a channel member for $2 a month. Those are the best ways to help support the channel. Okay, so Bryce Cabeldue pros. He's atypically built with short legs, and that's not always an advantage, but for an offensive lineman, it kind of is because it allows him to unconventionally win leverage, which is good for him because he doesn't really sink his hips well. So I think him having, he's a little bit low cut. I think it actually helps him win when he doesn't necessarily deserve to based on the technical elements of his blocking. So interesting build that actually I think helps him. He hits hard going into contact in the trenches. He generates good movement. If you want him to get some, big blowback power going into contact, he's pretty good at it. He's able to get knockback power going. So there is some of that. He plays physically. And I like the way he launches himself into contact. He's been a consistent starter over the last 4 seasons, lots of experience. I went over this in the last video, but 3,000 snaps and over 50 games in his college career. He's got a lot of experience. Now, that doesn't change the fact that he's an unfinished product that needs work, but he is not lacking for football experience. He is pretty good in terms of movement. I think that some of the RAS score stuff is a little exaggerated, but he does move well. Able to cover short distances with quickness and agility. Moves fairly well is what I wrote down here. I think that he will be effective in zone. I think he will be effective pulling. I think he'll be effective climbing to the next level. I don't know if he'll be able to put it all together to the degree that some people are saying. I believe his RAS score is really, really high. But remember, the numbers that they're using to put together that RAS score are not combine scores. So there is a little bit of projection being done here. He gets out of his stance quickly, and he's less likely to have to play catch-up to block. He's not somebody that is going to be a half second late getting out of his stance and end up having to scramble to catch up with a pass rusher. And that's playing tackle. So playing guard, it's going to be even better. It's going to be even easier because you're not going to have to deal with, James Pierce Jr. or somebody like that on the edge blowing past you because you were a little bit late out of your stance. No, he's going to be dealing with 3 techs in all likelihood, and there are some that are very athletic, but not most of them. Seems to have the right mentality for offensive line play. He plays violently and fiercely. So I like the way in which he approaches the game. I like the way in which he attacks. So I do think that there is a good foundation of a good football player here. He's got extensive tackle experience, which will give him a good mirror for better rushers. So as a guy who's going to be going up against 3 techs, he knows what it's like to deal with speed rushers because he played on the edge. So even the better 3 techs, even the really speedy 3 techs, the guys who can really just beat you with moves, he can mirror them. And they're going to throw moves at him. They're going to throw the inside moves at him. They're going to be trying to get him off balance. He's pretty well versed in that stuff, so that's good. He generates pretty good leg drive. He's got good technique on his power. When he's trying to drive a guy out of the hole and clear a run lane, he does a good job chopping his feet. I think that he is going to be a capable power blocker for gap-based runs. So I like that. I think that I think that he'll be able to bring that to the table no matter what. So there is some versatility here, right? You do have a guy with a little bit of power and a little bit of athleticism. Has a good variety to his pass sets. He allows him to surprise rushers. He mixes things up when he's going up against a rusher. Doesn't allow them to get comfortable with his sets, which that's part of the battle right there. And some players that are better than him are not as good at it as he is. He's also seems like a pretty cerebral player. I think he's a smart player. He's got mobility, do combo blocks, and climb up to hit moving targets. Again, I would caution against people thinking that he's going to be some top 1% athlete for an interior lineman, but I do think that his tackle mobility will translate well, and he will be much more athletic than the average. And his primary issues from college, which were to a certain extent penalties and all the pressures he allowed, will be heavily mitigated by moving him to guard. It's kind of like Gray Zabel, right? Gray Zabel played left tackle in college. He gave up some stuff. You're not going to have to worry about him giving that stuff up at guard because he is, well, he's not going to be dealing with the speedier rushers anymore. Okay, so those are the good things about Cabeldue as I see it. Let's get into some of the negatives, some of the concerns. Again, concerns is kind of a tricky word here because I'm not really that concerned about anything with a 6th round pick, but if we're talking about him making it in the NFL, I do think he plays standing straight up and he sets himself up for some lost trench fights. He gets away with it a little bit because he's low cut, but I still think he'd be better off being a little bit more of a knee bender or a hip sinker. And right now he's not. And given the fact that he played that way at Kansas for 5 years, tells you that he may never be able to get out of that. The shorter arms will force a move to guard. And honestly, the arms are so short, I'm not convinced that he'll be great with it at guard. Like, I think that is clearly the position he's meant to play, but 32.5 inches is still pushing it even for an interior lineman. So you're hoping that the move to guard shores it up, but he's still suboptimal there. And there are going to be speed rushers that give him trouble just because he doesn't have the length to get out to them. They're going to be long-armed defensive tackles that are going to get into his chest. Especially because another issue with him that I see is that he exposes his chest by keeping his hands too wide. Got to tighten them in, got to protect your chest, because once those big, long defensive tackles get their hands into your chest, it's over. So, got to learn how to protect his chest a little bit better. Despite him having pretty good power, he doesn't have anchor, and he's not big enough to hold his ground long term. He can win a rep initially, but eventually, if he's up against like a bull rush, if he's up against a really powerful tackle, he's going to lose. He just doesn't have the raw strength to hold up there. He's got virtually no experience inside from college, so some of this is still mostly projection. Like, we are talking about a guy who was a pure tackle in college. So for us to say, I think he can play guard, yeah, he probably can, but it's a projection. He did it pretty well at the Senior Bowl, but that's about the best we can say so far. So there is going to be a transition, and it's probably going to take a year or two. Struggles to maintain winning reps after taking initial control. He gets shed. He's definitely a guy who will initially win the rep, and then it'll get away from him, and he'll end up getting stacked and shed pretty easily, partially because of the short arms. So that's something that won't get better. And I think he can get a little bit better in run blocking with his hand placement and his angling. The technique needs some refinement. It's not terrible, but I think the technique needs some work. And that's all I had for Cabeldue. Again, these pros and cons lists are just going to get a little bit shorter with these guys because there's less to say, but I think that covers him pretty well. He's developmental. He's going to have to transition to guard. He is probably going to be best off as a backup, but there's some stuff here that can work. All right, So I'm going to do one more video later today. It might not be until later, like maybe even close to the evening. I'm not sure. But there is one more video coming later. See you guys soon. Go Hawks. Everybody have a good rest of your day. See you guys soon. Let me know what you think of Bryce Cabeldue down below. And yeah, let's see it.